Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Parr, and on this episode of Math Up to Par, we are going to be talking about decimals and how to transfer them from standard form to written form and from written form to standard form. So let's first talk about taking a decimal that is written in standard form, which is in numerical form, to written form. So when you're taking a number with decimals in standard form and you're changing it to the written form, you will want to break apart the number into sections before the decimal point and after the decimal point. What I mean by that is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a box around the part that comes before the decimal point and the part that comes after the decimal point. Okay? This decimal point in the middle, there is a very specific word that you're going to say when you get to that decimal point. And that word is and. So just like each comma has a word that goes along with it, like the thousands and then the millions and then the billions, the period, the decimal point represents the word and because it's talking about additional parts that are smaller than one. So what we're going to do is we're going to read this number out loud, and when we read it out loud, we write it the same way that we say it. So when you see this first box, I would say, okay, this is 3,489. Okay, nothing changes about that when I add the decimal point with other stuff on. Stuff gets added to it, but this is still the same number it always was before the decimal point came into play. So I would say this number and I would write it exactly how I say it, 3,489, okay? When I get to the decimal point, I'm going to write or say the word and, okay? And then you're going to put the name of the last place value. So in this case, the last place value is in the thousandths place. So I would end it with the word thousandths. So you're going to put the last place value, okay? And that'll be at the end, and that'll represent the place value of the last digit. So let's try it, okay? We are going to break this apart. And so here is what's before my decimal point. And then here is what is after my decimal point. I'm going to type this, and I'm going to type it in the same color. So the way I would say this number in the green box, I would read it as 2,146. The same way I say it is the same way I write it. So 2,146. And you notice how I don't put the word and anywhere in this number because the word and should only be used when you are talking about a decimal point. So after I get to this green box, I get to the decimal point. So now I'm going to write the word and because that's the way I would say it if I were reading it out loud. Then I get to my purple box. And so when I get to my purple box, I would read that number as 907, right? 907. So I'm going to write 907, just like that, okay? But at the very end, remember what I said, you have to write the name of the last place value that's there. So this one goes to the thousandths place. So the very last word that I'm going to write is the word thousandths, okay? So this whole thing, if I were to read it out, I would say that this is 2,146 and 907 thousandths, okay? So when I break it into pieces, it makes it a lot easier for me to transfer a number that's in standard numerical form to written form because I'm breaking it up into pieces. I write it exactly how I say it for this first part. Then I put the word and to represent the decimal point. Then I write it exactly how I say the second box, and then I end it with the word thousandths, which is the last place value that's represented on here. So let's try it with this one. So I'm going to do the same colors I did before. So now I am going to write in green, and I am going to type this. So this number in this green box, the way I would read it, the way I would say it is the way I would write it. That number is 35. Okay, there's no and or anything else because the and is reserved for the decimal point and only the decimal point. So after I write what's in the green box, I'm going to write the word and then I'm going to write the word that's in the purple box. I'm going to write the number. That number is 48. So I'm going to write 48 the way I would say it. And then to end it, I have to write the name of the last place value. It's not the thousandths place this time because it doesn't go all the way to the thousandths place. This is the tenths, this is the hundredths. So that 8 actually ends in the hundredths place. So I'm going to write the word hundredths to represent that last one, that last place value. So that tells me where the 48, how many 48 of what? 48 hundredths, 48 thousandths, 48 ten thousandths. That defines how many it is, how many pieces it is out of how many total. So the way I would say this is 35 and 48 hundredths. So now let's go the opposite way. Let's go from written form, so word form, and let's go backwards to standard or numerical form. So when you're changing a number with decimals from written form to standard form, you need to highlight the word and. Okay, so we're going to highlight that word and then we're going to highlight whatever the last word is. So that last word is going to represent the last place value, right? So tenth, hundredth, or thousandths. Then you're going to need to write the number of lines for that place, okay? So let's go ahead and highlight all of the words and all of the ands in all of these numbers. All right, so there we go. So the ands are in the middle, and that represents where the decimal point would fall. And then we're going to look whatever the last word is. So we have our tenths, thousandths, hundredths, thousandths, and hundredths. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and read the number that's before my word and, okay? So this number right here is 1,221. So I would write that write it in a different color. So it would be 1,221. Okay, that's how that number would look. Okay, but I get to the word and I put my decimal point. Okay, tenths, that means there's only one place after the decimal point. So it tells me that there are 5 tenths. So I'm going to put a 5 in the tenths place. Let's try this one. So my and is my decimal point. So let me read what's before the word and. 92. Okay, so just 92. So I'm going to write 92 before my decimal point. Then I'm going to write 3 lines after that decimal point because I see that the last word is thousandths, and the thousandths place is the third place value to the right of my decimal point. So this says that there are 768 thousandths. So I'm going to write the number 768 on that line. Let's do our next one. So I see my word and, so that's where my decimal point goes. And I'm going to look at the number that comes before the word and. That number is 605. So I'm going to write 605 before my decimal point. Then I see that my very last word is hundredths. So I'm going out of 100, okay? that's 2 places after the decimal point. So then I need to see how many hundredths are we talking about. We're only talking about 7 hundredths. So I need to make a decision whether I'm putting my number 7 here. Let me do it in grade. Whether I'm putting my number 7 here or if I'm putting my number 7 over here. Here or here. Well, it's 7 out of 100. If I put it here and I put a 0 as a placeholder right here, well, then that would change that to 70 hundredths, and that's not what that's saying. So let me rearrange these right here. If I put my 0 as a placeholder in my tens place, now this says 7, so this is 7 hundredths. Okay, so it's important to have a 0 as a placeholder for any of the place values that come before that last one when you're talking about decimal numbers. All right, let's do this next one. So I see my and, so that's where my decimal point goes. The number that's before the word and is 4, so I'm going to write the number 4. And then the very last word is thousandths, so I'm going to write 3 lines. This time it is 19 thousandths. Okay, well, 19 is only 2 digits, and I have 3 lines here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my 19 right here, and I'm going to put a placeholder in my tenths place. That placeholder is going to be 0 because there aren't any tenths in this number. So this number would show 4 and 19 thousandths. Last one, I have my decimal point right here. The number before the word and is 55, so I'm going to write the number 55. Okay, and then my last word is hundredths. The hundredths place is 2 places after the decimal point. So I am going to put 2 lines here to represent the 2 places, my tenths and then my hundredths. And then I see the number 3. So that number 3 is going to go right here. And I'm going to put a placeholder in my tenths place to show that I only have 3 hundredths. Okay? So when you break apart numbers from standard to written, and you break them into chunks, then it makes it easier to write them out in word form. And then when you have a word form and you have to go to standard form, if you break those numbers apart into chunks, that makes it easier to write it in standard form. Okay, so that the numbers don't get all jumbled together, because decimals, just like whole numbers, follow rules and they follow a pattern. And so if you follow those patterns, you'll be able to read and write them a lot easier. So thanks so much for listening and happy practice.